All right, here in topic five, we're going to start talking about research methodology used in cultural psychology. Now, I'm fairly certain that pretty much every one of your classes has a research methods topic to it, right? And I personally have a common set of slides that I'm, kind of tweak and modify a little bit. But that common set of slides that I would use in all of my other courses about research methodology just is not effective for this course because research in cultural psych is really quite different than it is in other areas of psych. Okay? We find that the way the West thinks modifies how this research works. So, just as a rule about how science works, um, scientists want to find global truths. And sometimes, and they don't want to find individual truths, they want to find global truths. And you can't get global truths. Like, are American people taller than Chinese people? Sample 350 million Americans and average height, and a couple billion Chinese people and their average height, and then maybe you can answer that question. No, you can't ask it. So you do a random sample of Americans, a random sample of Chinese, you measure their height, and you find out. You use statistics, etc. Well, one of the techniques, which is very commonly used in research, is a survey. And in survey, what's going to happen is it's common to ask, you want to ask a question, and you might ask it in multiple ways. Like might want to know about, let's say one of my research studies, I want to know about childhood socioeconomic status. How were you poor when you were growing up? Were you rich? Something like that. And so I might ask a variety of questions, like, you know, did you have lots of money in your household when you were growing up? Or did you need a lot of, did you find yourself needing things that you couldn't purchase? These kinds of a bunch of questions to access this one concept of socioeconomic status. And yet, when they tried to use this in this particular group in Mexico, the Zinacatecans, they found that the people there would get angry. They would be like, because we recognize when I ask five questions, you answer one, you reset. You answer two, you reset. But they felt it was like a conversation, and they're like, "You already asked me that question. Why do you keep asking me the same stuff?" Okay, so they just didn't understand how Western thinking worked. Okay, so when doing cultural research, who should you study? Well, if you want to study cultural differences and you compare the United States to Canada, you're probably going to hit a lot of dead ends. Okay, so you probably want to make sure that if you want to study things such as individualism versus collectivism, you want to find two cultures that are most furthest apart on such a measure. And you want to grab populations that you have a reason to believe there should be a difference, not just like what would happen if. No what if research. And on top of that, you ought to have at least somebody on your research team that is got some pretty intimate familiarity with the culture and how the culture works. And so we find that most current research, even research in cultural psychology, involves college students. And it is hard. It is hard to learn about, and I'm using quotes here, uneducated people. They don't have the access, and it's hard to find them, by the way, hard to get access. University students are relatively easy to get into a participant pool. Okay? So when you're doing cross-cultural research, you have to be very concerned about methodological equivalence. And that is the idea that the way one cultural sample understands the task is the same way that the other cultural group understands the task. And it's not easy, but one attempt would be this back translation. She might have instructions in one language, then have those instructions translated into the second cultural language that you want to study. Then a second translator comes and translates it from the second language back to the original language. And now you look at the original instructions and the instructions that have in fact been translated and brought back. Are they the same? Okay. And so it's a start on this notion of equivalency. But what you find is some cultures are just, they bring with them different things. So in surveys, for example, it's real common to say, on a scale of 1 to 7, what's your opinion of? Well, some cultures, and we're going to get to them and explain them later, but like in a lot of Asian cultures, they'll have an idea. This is, the nail that sticks up will get pounded back down. So they come into this research with this fundamental idea, I shouldn't stick out. And so if you ask them on a scale of 1 to 7, what do you think about? They're going to go 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, which would be like, I have no opinion. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to stick myself out. Whereas Americans, we have perhaps an adage that says, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So how do you be successful? Make a lot of noise. Stick out. Make everybody see you. So you might find that Asian samples would have a moderacy bias, whereas Western, in particular American samples, would have much more of an extremity bias. Okay? So it's possible that you can standardize responses, but it's got some solutions, but this involves z-scores. It's, yeah. You find in some cultures that they might perhaps say, for example, have very high hierarchical structure bases, that is, hierarchies, and the researcher or the person asking the questions will be viewed as somebody higher on their hierarchy, and they have this tendency, if somebody that is higher than you says something, you just say, I agree. I mean, that's just, it's a reflexive thing. You don't actually express your own opinion. You simply agree with the opinion of who's ever above you in a hierarchy. But also reference group effect. That is, if you say to me, on a scale of 1 to 10, how rich are you? And I'm even like, what am I comparing myself to? Because in some communities I'm rich, and in some communities I'm poor. And so it's pretty clear that any answer on a Likert scale question on a scale of 1 to 7, Likert scale, that the group that you are referring to will have a huge influence.